In the modern world, conversations about mental health, confidence, and self-worth are becoming increasingly relevant, especially among young men. One area that remains largely unspoken, but plays a significant role in personal development, is the relationship between masturbation and confidence. While it's often brushed off as a harmless or even healthy habit, the deeper psychological effects of frequent masturbation, especially when paired with excessive pornography use, are not as harmless as they seem. Understanding how this behavior affects the mind is the first step in regaining clarity, confidence, and control over one's life. When someone masturbates, the brain releases a cocktail of feel-good chemicals, most notably dopamine. Dopamine is a neurotransmitter associated with pleasure, motivation, reward, and learning. It plays a crucial role in shaping habits and influencing how we perceive ourselves and our goals. Every time a person engages in a pleasurable activity, whether it's eating chocolate, scrolling social media, or watching porn, the brain gets a dopamine hit. Over time, if a person constantly seeks out high dopamine activities like pornography, induced masturbation, the brain can start to rewire itself. It begins to favor short-term pleasure over long-term satisfaction. This can lead to what psychologists and neuroscientists refer to as dopamine desensitization. Essentially, the brain becomes less responsive to the same levels of stimulation. What once gave a strong sense of pleasure now becomes dull or even required just to feel normal. In this state, people often find that they struggle to get motivated, feel less energized, and have difficulty focusing. They start seeking more intense forms of stimulation, often returning to the same habit more frequently. But here's where the connection to confidence begins to emerge. Confidence is, at its core, the belief in one's ability to handle challenges, take action, and be worthy of success. It is tied to our self-image and how we view our own willpower and discipline. When someone becomes trapped in the cycle of frequent masturbation, especially when they feel unable to stop despite a desire to, this creates a rift in self-trust. Each time they give in to the urge against their own better judgment, a message is sent to the subconscious: I am not in control of myself. Over time, this can deeply erode a person's sense of confidence. This erosion doesn't always happen overnight, and it often goes unnoticed. A person might still function well on the outside, going to work, interacting with others, appearing fine. But underneath, they may feel a quiet frustration, a lack of drive, or an internal conflict that eats away at their self-esteem. They may struggle to look people in the eye, avoid taking risks, or procrastinate on goals. They feel drained but don't know why. They feel uninspired but can't connect it to the habit they've normalized. Pornography makes this even more complex. Unlike natural sexual experiences, porn presents an endless stream of novelty. This artificial stimulation trains the brain to expect new, exaggerated experiences every time. It detaches sexuality from real-life connection and makes arousal dependent on screen-based fantasy. Over time, this can affect how one sees themselves sexually, socially, and even emotionally. If someone feels they can only experience pleasure through artificial means, it damages how they view themselves in relationships, leading to social withdrawal or performance anxiety. Addiction doesn't always look like drugs or alcohol. Behavioral addictions can be just as powerful and destructive, especially because they're socially acceptable or even encouraged in private. When someone masturbates multiple times a day or uses it as a form of escapism from emotional discomfort, boredom, loneliness, stress, they are using the behavior not as a choice, but as a coping mechanism. This removes the element of conscious decision-making and replaces it with compulsive response. And once again, this strips away confidence. Why? Because confidence isn't just about success, it's about trust. Self-trust If a person repeatedly chooses short-term gratification over long-term well-being, they begin to mistrust their own decisions. They start avoiding accountability. They might promise themselves to stop but give in after a few hours or days, leading to guilt. That guilt quietly grows, forming a loop: pleasure, shame, numbness, repeat. The more this loop continues, the more disconnected they feel from their own inner power. Some people might argue, but it's natural, everyone does it, and it's true, sexuality is natural. Masturbation itself isn't inherently bad or damaging. What matters is the frequency, the context, and the underlying intent. Are you doing it to explore and express yourself? Or are you doing it out of habit, boredom, or emotional suppression? Are you in control of the behavior, or is it controlling you? Confidence blooms when we feel we are the authors of our own actions. When we make a promise to ourselves and keep it, that inner voice grows stronger. When we resist temptation in favor of purpose, we feel powerful. But when we constantly seek an easy way out, especially through habits that drain our energy, our sense of worth starts to decay. It's not about being perfect or pure. It's about being in command. Masturbation in isolation may seem like a small thing, but in the grander psychological picture, it reveals how we manage our emotions, impulses, and energy. If we always take the path of least resistance, how can we expect ourselves to rise to challenges, chase big goals, or speak boldly in public? The confidence we seek externally must be built internally through discipline, self-respect, and conscious living. Those who have gone through long periods of abstaining or even simply moderating their habit often report an increase in focus, clarity, and self-belief. They feel more social, more driven, and more optimistic. Why? Because they are no longer leaking energy into temporary pleasure. They are redirecting it into meaningful action. The brain is no longer hijacked by constant stimulation and is able to restore its natural balance. In summary, the psychology behind masturbation and confidence is deeper than most people think. It is not a question of morality or shame. It is a question of whether you are building yourself up or slowly breaking yourself down. If you feel that your habits are starting to own you, then perhaps it's time to take a step back, observe honestly, and decide who you really want to be. Because confidence isn't found in a mirror, it's built in silence, one powerful choice at a time. Masturbation, like many behaviors tied to human instinct and biology, walks a delicate line between being a healthy outlet and a potentially harmful habit. In its natural, moderate form, it's often considered a normal part of human sexuality, a private act of self-exploration and stress relief. But when practiced compulsively or without awareness, it can quickly shift from a moment of release to a cycle of self-sabotage. The key lies not in the act itself, but in the frequency, the motivation, and the consequences it creates in a person's life. To truly understand the difference between a healthy habit and a harmful one, we must first look at intent. Why does someone turn to masturbation? Is it to release sexual tension in a conscious, mindful way? Or is it to escape discomfort, numb anxiety, or avoid real-life problems? When a habit becomes a form of emotional coping rather than a deliberate choice, it ceases to be neutral. Instead, it becomes an unconscious reflex to run away from what needs to be faced. Over time, what was once a source of temporary comfort becomes a psychological crutch, creating more harm than good. People often fail to recognize the subtle signs that a seemingly harmless behavior is becoming destructive. The earliest symptoms usually manifest in the form of guilt, shame, or regret feelings that arise immediately after the act. This internal conflict is a signal that the habit is no longer aligned with one's values or goals. Someone may finish masturbating and feel drained, mentally foggy, or disappointed in themselves, promising to stop, only to repeat the behavior again the next day. This creates a feedback loop. A moment of pleasure followed by self-criticism, which leads to more emotional discomfort, triggering the urge again. One of the most overlooked aspects of harmful masturbation habits is their connection to pornography. Porn is not a neutral tool, it's an industry built to hijack the brain's reward system. With endless novelty available at the swipe of a finger, it creates an illusion of unlimited sexual access and fantasy that is not grounded in real human connection. Over time, frequent exposure to such content desensitizes the brain. What once excited someone now requires more extreme content to achieve the same level of arousal. This can distort a person's expectations about sex, relationships, and even their own body. More importantly, it creates dependency. The more someone relies on artificial stimulation, the harder it becomes to derive pleasure or fulfillment from real-world experiences. This is when masturbation shifts from healthy to harmful. It stops being a personal act and becomes an escape mechanism, something used to avoid dealing with stress, boredom, loneliness, or lack of purpose. When a person starts turning to this habit as a form of self-soothing multiple times a day without reflection or control, they're not just chasing pleasure, they're suppressing pain. A healthy habit adds to your life. It makes you stronger, more centered, and more connected to your values. It fits into your life without taking it over. You control it, it doesn't control you. In contrast, a harmful habit quietly subtracts from your energy, your time, and your confidence. It sneaks in during moments of vulnerability and makes you feel weaker afterward. It becomes a silent thief, stealing motivation, clarity, and direction. That's how a daily pattern of unconscious behavior, especially one as intimate as masturbation, can quietly undermine self-worth. This is not to demonize sexuality, far from it. Sexuality is a vital, beautiful part of being human, but it requires balance and conscious engagement. When expressed in healthy ways through intimate relationships, mutual connection, or even mindful self-exploration, it can enhance well-being. It can lead to deeper intimacy, emotional bonding, and a stronger understanding of the self. But when it is disconnected from meaning and reduced to a robotic ritual, it ceases to uplift and starts to deplete. Consider how habits form. The brain loves efficiency. When we do something repeatedly, it becomes automatic. That's why brushing your teeth doesn't require deep thought. You've done it so many times, your brain puts it on autopilot. The same happens with masturbation. If someone turns to it every night to fall asleep or every time they're stressed, their brain wires that action as a go-to solution. Even if the result no longer brings real satisfaction, the habit is deeply ingrained. Breaking that pattern isn't just about willpower, it's about rewiring behavior. This is where reflection becomes essential. A person must ask themselves, is this serving me or sabotaging me? One of the most dangerous things about compulsive habits is that they often go unexamined. Days turn into weeks, and weeks into years, with the same behavior playing on repeat. Meanwhile, dreams are delayed, energy is lost, and confidence is quietly eroded. It's not always dramatic, but it's consistent. And that consistency, over time, creates a version of you that feels like less than who you're meant to be. When someone takes the time to become aware of the pattern, they regain power. They can begin to make conscious choices rather than reactive ones. Instead of numbing stress through release, they can channel that energy into productive activities, exercise, creativity, study, or meaningful connection. Each time they choose growth over gratification, their inner strength grows. They begin to feel proud of themselves, not because they're denying pleasure, but because they're aligning with purpose. It's also important to acknowledge the emotional weight that comes with breaking harmful habits. Many people carry shame around masturbation, not just because of cultural taboos, but because they feel out of control. They don't know who to talk to, and they often suffer in silence. But the truth is, you are not broken. You are not weak, you are simply human, caught in a cycle that millions of others also face. The path forward isn't judgment, it's self-awareness, compassion, and commitment to change. What separates the successful from the stuck is not talent or luck. It's the ability to reflect, recalibrate, and rise. When a person chooses to evaluate their relationship with any habit, they are taking back their life. They are saying, I am worth more than this momentary escape. I deserve to feel alive, focused, and free. So, if masturbation is something that feels automatic, exhausting, or shameful, it's time to look at it not with disgust but with curiosity. Ask what lies beneath the urge. Ask what needs healing. Ask what you truly want to feel, not just for 5 minutes, but for the rest of your life. Healthy habits build you, harmful ones break you. The difference lies in awareness, and once you have that, you hold the power to change not just your behavior, but your entire identity. In life, there's a certain force that drives us toward our goals. It's what gives us the stamina to push through challenges, the clarity to make sharp decisions, and the confidence to walk into a room and own our presence. That force is energy, not just physical energy, but mental and emotional energy too. It's the fire behind ambition, discipline, and self-belief. And yet, many people unknowingly drain that force every day through compulsive habits like excessive masturbation. While society often downplays the effect of these personal behaviors, the truth is that your energy, your focus, and your ability to control your impulses are all intimately connected. And when one is weakened, they all suffer. When we talk about energy, we often think in physical terms, how tired or awake we feel. But energy is much deeper than that. It's your drive. It's the fuel that powers your creativity, your discipline, your courage to speak up, and your determination to act. This energy doesn't just come from food or sleep. It also comes from how you manage your body and mind. When someone repeatedly engages in masturbation, especially in a compulsive or unconscious way, they begin to leak energy without even realizing it. What feels like a temporary release becomes a long-term drain. Masturbation followed by orgasm releases a heavy dose of dopamine and other neurochemicals like prolactin and oxytocin, which in the right context can help regulate mood and provide a sense of relaxation. But when done excessively, these chemicals create a cycle that leaves you depleted. Prolactin, for example, has a calming effect post-orgasm, but too much of it, especially released too frequently, can lead to fatigue, brain fog, and even a temporary dip in testosterone levels. Over time, this can reduce not just your physical energy, but your mental sharpness and emotional resilience. Think about how you feel after giving in to an urge you told yourself you'd avoid. You feel tired, maybe even guilty. You lose momentum. That motivation you had just hours before to start a new project, go to the gym, or have a meaningful conversation is now gone. It's not just that you're tired, it's that you're unaligned. Your brain is now recovering from the overstimulation you forced on it, and your body is in a recovery phase. During that recovery, you're not thinking creatively, you're not focused, and you're not driven, you're in a low. Now, multiply that effect over time. Imagine doing this every day, or even multiple times a day. Imagine draining that internal battery over and over again, never giving it a chance to fully recharge. That's what many people do without even noticing it. They wonder why they feel sluggish, uninspired, or easily distracted. They chase caffeine, social media, or comfort food to feel better, never realizing that the real leak is coming from within, from a lack of control over their impulses. But this isn't just about energy, it's about focus. The ability to focus in today's world is a superpower. In a world filled with distractions, notifications, and instant gratification, Those who can lock in and work deeply are the ones who rise. And focus isn't just about willpower, it's about how well you manage your internal state. Every time you give in to an urge without thinking, especially one that offers instant pleasure, you weaken your focus muscles. You train your brain to expect quick rewards. You make it harder for your mind to stay with something challenging or boring, like studying, building a business, or even maintaining a deep conversation. Your brain starts to crave novelty and excitement, not discipline and patience. It gets hooked on easy dopamine quick pleasure with no real effort. And that's what excessive masturbation, especially when paired with porn, delivers. But this kind of dopamine is counterfeit. It feels good for a moment, but it doesn't build anything. It doesn't move you forward. It's like eating sugar when what you really need is nourishment. It satisfies the surface but leaves the core of you empty. Self-control is the foundation of confidence, focus, and personal power. When you can master your impulses, you begin to trust yourself, and that self-trust turns into real self-respect. You begin to see yourself not as a victim of desire, but as someone who can delay gratification in pursuit of something greater. You carry yourself differently, you speak with conviction, you make better choices, and that inner fire, the energy you thought was gone, begins to return. Self-control doesn't mean suppressing your desires or living like a monk. It means being in charge. It means knowing when to say no, and more importantly, why you're saying no. It means directing your energy into things that grow you rather than things that just entertain or distract you. Every time you resist a short-term pleasure in favor of a long-term goal, you strengthen the neural pathways of discipline. You train your brain to work with you, not against you. This is why many successful people, athletes, entrepreneurs, performers practice periods of abstinence or control over their sexual energy. Not because they believe it's wrong, but because they know how valuable their energy is. They understand that what they put into their body and mind affects their output. They know that discipline in one area translates to strength in all areas. If you can say no to an urge that feels overwhelming, you can say yes to waking up early. You can say yes to going to the gym. You can say yes to standing on a stage and speaking your truth. It all connects. What's powerful is that this transformation is available to anyone. You don't need money, fame, or talent to build discipline. You need awareness, a decision, and the courage to act. The first time you say no to a compulsive urge, it feels hard. The second time, it gets a little easier. By the third time, you start to feel a shift. You're no longer reacting, you're responding. You're no longer trapped, you're choosing. That's where your power lives. That's where focus sharpens. That's where energy grows. If you've been feeling drained, unmotivated, or scattered, it's time to examine not just your actions, but the habits behind them. Ask yourself what's stealing your energy. Ask yourself what would happen if you redirected that energy into your goals, your health, your vision. Imagine waking up each day with clarity, standing tall with purpose, and looking people in the eye with confidence, not because of external validation, but because you know you're in control of yourself. That kind of power doesn't come from outside. It comes from within, and it starts with how you manage the energy you've been given. You are not weak, you are not broken, you simply haven't been taught how to manage your power, but now you know. And knowing is the first step. The next step is action. Choose control, choose focus, choose to protect your energy like your life depends on it, because in many ways it does. Rebuilding confidence isn't a single event. It's not something that just magically returns after a few days of trying to do better. Confidence is a state of mind built slowly, choice by choice, especially after you've lost your grip on it. Many people who struggle with low confidence due to compulsive habits like excessive masturbation often feel like they've fallen too far. They feel stuck in a cycle of urges, guilt, and shame, and they quietly begin to accept this low version of themselves as permanent. But the truth is, it's not. You can rebuild, you can regain your power, you can take back control. And you don't need to wait for a perfect moment to begin. The rebuilding starts the moment you decide to stop living in reaction and start living in intention. One of the first and most powerful steps in this process is becoming honest with yourself, not judgmental, not critical, just honest. Most people who struggle with confidence after falling into compulsive habits have already tried to lie to themselves. It's not that bad. I'll stop tomorrow. It's just how I cope. These are defense mechanisms, mental shields to avoid confronting the pain that's actually building up underneath. But real confidence cannot coexist with denial. It grows in truth. The truth might hurt at first, but it liberates you. When you finally admit, this habit is hurting me, you open a door, you create space for healing. From that moment, you can begin to examine what's been driving the behavior. Are you escaping boredom, avoiding failure, numbing loneliness, chasing quick highs because you don't feel good enough for long-term rewards? Confidence starts to grow the moment you look at yourself not with shame, but with curiosity. When you understand the root, you can begin to heal the wound instead of constantly medicating the symptoms. That's how you stop the cycle. Next comes structure. Without structure, willpower will fail. Trying to just stop without a plan is like walking into a storm without a jacket and hoping you won't get wet. You need a system. Start by identifying your triggers, the times, emotions, or environments that lead to the habit. Is it late at night? After scrolling on your phone, when you're alone and tired? Awareness of these patterns gives you the power to intercept them. Once you know the when and why, you can begin creating a new plan. Build a daily routine that replaces your low moments with intentional actions. If you usually turn to masturbation before bed, replace it with reading, meditation, or journaling. If you do it first thing in the morning, replace that with a cold shower or a quick workout. The goal isn't just to resist the urge, but to redirect the energy into something that fuels you. Action rewires your identity. Every time you break an old pattern and insert a new behavior, you're telling your brain, "This is who I am now." That identity shift is the cornerstone of real confidence. But breaking habits doesn't mean perfection. You will slip, you may relapse. That's not failure, that's feedback. Most people destroy their confidence not because they fail, but because they attach shame to every stumble. They fall once and label themselves weak. But imagine treating your best friend that way. Would you call them a loser because they made one mistake? Of course not. You'd encourage them to get back up. Treat yourself with the same grace. Confidence grows not when you avoid failure, but when you learn how to rise after it. Accountability accelerates this growth. Trying to battle a deeply ingrained habit alone is difficult. That doesn't mean you need to tell the whole world what you're going through, but finding someone you trust, maybe a mentor, a coach, or even a close friend, can change everything. Just having someone who knows your journey makes it real. It takes your goal out of your head and brings it into the world. You'll find yourself more committed, more resilient, and more aware of your actions. Even journaling daily to track your progress can serve as self-accountability. When you write your wins, losses, and reflections, you create a mirror that shows you exactly how far you've come. Rebuilding confidence also requires reconnection with your body, your mind, and your purpose. Many people trapped in compulsive habits feel disconnected. They live in their heads, always overthinking, overanalyzing, escaping reality. To heal that split, you must return to your body. Movement helps. Exercise isn't just about aesthetics. It's about reclaiming your strength. Lifting weights, running, or even walking daily sends a message: I am worth taking care of. It re-anchors you in the present moment, reduces anxiety, and builds discipline, the very foundation of confidence. Alongside physical habits, mental focus matters. Set clear goals. They don't have to be grand or overwhelming. Start with something simple but meaningful. Wake up at the same time every day, drink water before coffee, meditate for 5 minutes. These aren't just tasks, they are identity statements. Each completed habit reminds you that you are someone who takes control. As you add more of these daily wins, you begin to carry yourself differently. That internal shift becomes visible. People notice, but more importantly, you notice. Perhaps the most underrated part of rebuilding confidence is rediscovering your mission. Many who lose themselves in compulsive habits do so because they feel aimless. They lack purpose. Without something meaningful to move toward, distraction becomes the default. That's why you must find or create something worth chasing. It might be a new skill, a business idea, a dream physique, or a deeper spiritual path. When your days are anchored in purpose, temptations lose their power. You no longer crave fake rewards because you're working toward real ones. But all of this routine, reflection, discipline, purpose, it only works when you believe you're worthy of the results. That's the final layer of rebuilding confidence, self-worth. Many people don't truly believe they deserve a better life, so they sabotage it when it starts to happen. But you need to remember this: confidence isn't about thinking you're better than others. It's about knowing you're just as worthy. You are worthy of peace, of clarity, of focus, of love, and of power. You are worthy of being in control of your own life. And you don't need to earn that worth, it's already in you. Your job is to remember it. Taking back control of your life isn't always easy, but it is always possible. One day, one decision, one promise at a time. You may not see the results instantly, but they're building. Every urge resisted, every new habit started, every moment of clarity, it adds up. And one day, you'll look back and realize that the old version of you, the one who felt powerless, is gone. In their place stands someone who walks with intention, speaks with conviction, and lives with purpose. That person is already within you. All you have to do is start acting like them until the world and your own reflection catches up.